Hey everyone, my name is Claire Donovan. I'm 35 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed love was something you proved by how much pain you could quietly carry. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. I believed that if I stayed dependable, if I stayed calm, if I stayed available, the people I loved would eventually notice. They would see the sacrifice. They would understand the cost. That belief shaped nearly every decision I made, and it nearly ruined my life. I grew up in a small, well-kept neighborhood just outside Columbus, Ohio, the kind of place where lawns were trimmed every Saturday morning and neighbors waved even if they didn't know your name. Our house was nothing special, but it was solid. 2 stories, beige siding, white porch railing my father repainted every few summers. My parents liked to say we were comfortable. What that really meant was that we were always one unexpected bill away from panic, but we never talked about it. My father, Mark Donovan, worked maintenance for a manufacturing plant. He was steady, quiet, proud of never missing a shift. My mother, Susan, stayed home when we were younger and later picked up part-time work at a medical billing office. She liked control. She liked order. She liked things to look fine, even when they weren't. Then there was my younger sister, Ashley. Ashley was 3 years younger than me and everything I wasn't. Loud, emotional, impulsive, effortlessly charming. She cried easily and laughed just as easily. Teachers worried about her. Neighbors adored her. My parents hovered around her like gravity pulled harder in her direction. I was the easy one. I didn't complain. I didn't need reminders. I didn't ask for much. When something went wrong, my parents didn't panic about me. They trusted me to adapt. And so I did. I learned early that being low maintenance made life smoother for everyone else. When Ashley forgot her homework, I helped her finish it. When she got grounded, I defended her. When my parents argued late at night, I stayed in my room and pretended not to hear. By high school, I was cooking dinner twice a week and managing my own schedule. By college, I worked part-time to cover expenses so my parents wouldn't have to worry. They were proud of me. They just never worried about me. There's a difference. 9 years ago, I graduated college and landed my first real job at a mid-size accounting firm in Columbus. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. Benefits, predictable hours, a future I could plan around. On my third week there, I received my first full paycheck. I remember standing in the break room, phone in hand, staring at the deposit confirmation like it might disappear if I blinked. For the first time since I'd moved out, I wasn't calculating every dollar in my head. I could breathe. That feeling lasted less than 2 minutes. My phone rang. Mom. I hesitated. Calls from my mother were rarely simple. They carried weight, expectation, urgency. I answered. Claire, she said, and I knew immediately something was wrong. Her voice had that tight edge, controlled but fragile, the tone she used when she needed something but didn't want to sound like she was asking. It's your father. My stomach dropped. He collapsed at work, she said. They think it was a small stroke. He's conscious, but they're keeping him overnight. I slid into the plastic chair beside the vending machine. Is he okay? He's stable, she replied quickly. Then she slowed down. Let the silence stretch. But honey, the bills are already starting. There it was. The insurance isn't great, she continued, and you know how behind we already are on the mortgage. Foreclosure. She didn't say the word, but it hung in the air between us. I don't know what we're going to do, she whispered. I didn't think. I didn't ask questions. I didn't pause. How much do you need? I asked. She exhaled shakily. If you could help with $2,000 a month, just until things stabilize. $2,000, more than half my paycheck. My chest tightened, but I pushed the feeling down. I can do that, I said. Her relief was immediate. Oh, thank God, she said. I don't know what we'd do without you. Then she added, almost casually, don't tell your father. He'd feel so ashamed. I agreed. I always agreed. That night, I set up an automatic transfer. Monthly, recurring, reliable. I told myself it was temporary, just until Dad recovered, just until things improved. Family helps family. 3 days later, the first payment went through. I waited for a thank you message. It never came. Instead, the next time I spoke to my mother, she said, "This is what good daughters do." It wasn't praise. It was expectation. At first, I didn't notice the changes. The money left my account quietly, predictably. My life adjusted around it. I stopped eating out, picked up freelance work, put off trips I'd planned. Dad recovered faster than expected. The payments didn't stop. Physical therapy is expensive, Mom said. Work hours are still reduced, she added. The mortgage company is being difficult. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? About 6 months in, I saw something that made my stomach twist. I was scrolling Instagram during lunch when a photo popped up on my feed. Ashley, standing in front of a mirror, smiling, holding a designer handbag I recognized instantly. The caption read, "Retail therapy fixes everything, love you, Mom." The bag cost more than my monthly rent. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. I almost called my mother, almost. But then I imagined her reaction. The hurt, the disappointment, the accusation that I was being selfish while my father recovered. So instead, I told myself a story. Maybe it was a gift. Maybe Ashley needed it. Maybe I was overreacting. That was the first lie I told myself. Years passed like that. The payments grew quietly. 2,000 became 2,500, then 3,000, then more. Every increase came with a reason. Every reason came with guilt. Ashley never seemed to struggle. She bounced between online classes, business ideas, influencer dreams. Mom always defended her. She's finding herself. You were always more responsible. She needs more support. And somehow that logic always landed on me. I was the strong one, so I carried it. By my late 20s, my entire financial life revolved around not disrupting the transfers. I delayed buying a home, delayed saving seriously, delayed my own future. I met Ethan when I was 27. He noticed things I tried not to, like how I never talked about savings, like how I worked constantly, like how every call with my mother left me drained. One night, after a family dinner, he asked quietly, "Why does your mom never ask how you're doing?" I laughed it off. She's just stressed. But later, lying awake, the question echoed. She never asked. 4 years ago, my grandfather Walter called me unexpectedly. We weren't close. Mom always said he was distant, cold, but his voice was gentle. "Claire," he said, "are you happy?" The question startled me. "Yes," I replied automatically, a pause. "And your mother," he continued, "is she good to you?" Something in his tone unsettled me. "Yes," I said again. Another pause. "If that ever changes," he said slowly, "you call me. Promise." "I promise." I hung up and didn't think about it again. By the time I turned 33, I had been sending money for nearly a decade. I still didn't know the total. I didn't want to. Then I found out I was pregnant, and for the first time, I started asking questions I'd avoided for years, and nothing would ever be the same again. And the day I saw the plus sign on the pregnancy test, the first thing I felt wasn't joy. It was fear. Not the kind that comes from wondering if you'll be a good parent. Not the kind that comes from imagining labor or sleepless nights. This was a quieter fear, a colder one. It came from doing math in my head that no longer worked. I was standing alone in the bathroom of our apartment, the light above the mirror buzzing softly. The test sat on the counter between the soap dispenser and my toothbrush, like it was waiting for me to argue with it. But there was nothing to argue. The result was clear. I sank down onto the edge of the tub, one hand on my stomach, the other gripping the counter. My chest felt tight, not from panic, but from realization. For years, my life had been built around one assumption, that I came second, and now, someone else needed me to come first. Ethan was ecstatic. When I told him, his face lit up in a way I hadn't seen before. He pulled me into a hug, spun me around, laughed out loud like this was the easiest thing in the world. "We're going to be parents," he said, eyes shining. I smiled. I hugged him back. And then quietly, I started rearranging everything in my head. Because the truth was, I didn't know how to be someone's priority. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The room was dark except for the faint glow of streetlights slipping through the blinds. I opened my banking app. I don't know why I did it then. Maybe because I couldn't avoid it anymore. Maybe because bringing a child into the world made denial feel irresponsible. I scrolled through the transfers. month after month, year after year. The amounts varied, but the direction never did. Out, always out. I stopped scrolling when my throat tightened. The total wasn't listed, but my brain filled in the gaps easily enough. It was more than a house, more than a future, more than I could afford to ignore. I locked my phone and turned onto my side, facing away from Ethan, tears slipping silently into the pillow. For the first time, I wondered something I'd never allowed myself to ask before. What if they never planned to stop? I told my mother about the pregnancy 2 days later. I waited until after dinner, after she'd finished talking about Ashley's newest business idea, after she'd complained about gas prices and groceries. "I have some news," I said carefully. "Oh?" she replied, distracted. "I'm pregnant." There was a pause, then a small gasp. "Oh. Well," she said slowly, that's something. Not congratulations, not happiness, just assessment." "How far along?" she asked. "Almost 9 weeks." Another pause. "Well," she said, "you know this changes things." My stomach tightened. "How so?" "You'll need to be careful with money," she replied. "Babies are expensive." I nearly laughed. Instead, I said, "Yes, that's actually something I wanted to talk to you about." She hummed softly, the sound she made when she sensed a conversation turning inconvenient. "I might need to reduce the amount I'm sending each month," I said carefully. "At least for a while, just until we adjust." The silence on the other end of the line felt heavy. "Reduce?" she repeated. "Yes," I said. "Not stop, just reduce." "Claire," she said, her tone sharpening, "your father still isn't back to full hours." "I understand," I replied, "but we have to prepare too." There it was, the shift. "So your child matters more than your father?" she asked quietly. The words landed like a slap. "That's not what I said." "It sounds like it," she replied. "We've depended on you. We've counted on you." I swallowed. "I'm still helping," I said, "just not as much." She sighed dramatically. "I just didn't think you'd turn your back on us like this." I felt something crack. "I'm not turning my back," I said, voice shaking. "I'm asking for balance." "Well," she replied coolly, "I hope you can live with the consequences of that." The call ended shortly after. I sat there long after, phone pressed to my ear, feeling like I'd done something unforgivable. The next transfer request came 3 days later. It was higher than usual. I stared at the number. I didn't send it right away. That delay triggered something I wasn't prepared for. My mother started calling more often, texting more frequently, leaving voicemails when I didn't respond immediately. Each message carried a familiar tone: urgency, disappointment, guilt. "Your father's stressed. We're barely managing. I thought family meant something to you." Ashley even called me, which was rare. "Mom's really upset," she said. "She's crying a lot." "I didn't do anything wrong," I replied. "She feels abandoned," Ashley said. "You've always been the reliable one." There it was again, the role I never applied for. Ethan noticed the change in me. "You're quieter," he said one evening. "What's going on?" I hesitated. I'd never told him the full truth about the money. He knew I helped my parents. He didn't know how much. He didn't know how long. That night, I told him everything. Every transfer, every increase, every justification. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he sat back, stunned. "Claire," he said slowly, "that's not helping. That's supporting." The words stung. "They're my parents," I said. "And you're about to be one," he replied gently. Something in his voice broke through my defenses. "You don't owe them your future," he added. I didn't answer, because part of me still believed I did. The tension grew as my pregnancy progressed. Mom stopped calling just to chat. Every conversation revolved around money. Every interaction felt transactional. Ashley posted photos from weekend trips, new clothes, fancy dinners. I stopped liking them. I stopped looking. One afternoon, while organizing old paperwork, I found something that made my hands shake. A bank statement from years ago. It listed the mortgage payment. It was lower than what I'd been sending monthly for years. I stared at the number. Then I checked another and another. A cold realization settled over me. I wasn't just helping, I was funding their lifestyle. I called my grandfather that night. I hadn't spoken to him since that strange conversation years earlier. He answered on the second ring. "Claire," he said, "I was hoping you'd call." I swallowed. "I'm pregnant," I said. "Congratulations," he replied warmly. "How are you?" The question almost made me cry. "I don't know," I admitted, and for the first time I told someone the truth. All of it. He listened quietly. When I finished, he sighed. "Claire," he said, "your mother learned long ago who she could lean on without resistance." The words hit hard. "And you," he continued gently, "were kind enough to let her." Silence stretched between us. "You deserve more than survival," he said finally. "You deserve a life." I hung up feeling something unfamiliar, validated. 2 weeks later, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. She looked tired, dramatic, wounded. "We need to talk," she said. I let her in. She didn't sit down. "I don't recognize you anymore," she said. "You used to care." I felt something shift inside me. "I still do," I said. "I just can't do everything." "You're choosing your new family over us," she accused. "Yes," I said quietly. The words surprised both of us. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "You'll regret this," she said coldly. Maybe, but for the first time, I didn't apologize. That night, as I lay beside Ethan, one hand on my growing stomach, I realized something terrifying and freeing. I had been afraid of losing my family, but I had already lost myself. And part 3 would be the moment they realized I was no longer available to be sacrificed. And once I said no for the first time, everything around me began to crack. Not all at once, not dramatically. It happened the way old foundations fail, quietly, unevenly, and with a sound only the person standing on it can hear. After my mother left my apartment that night, I didn't cry. That surprised me. I'd spent years crying after conversations with her. Quiet tears in bathrooms, in parked cars, in bed beside a sleeping partner who thought I was just tired. But that night, I felt empty instead. Not numb, resolved. I placed one hand on my stomach and felt a small, unfamiliar swell beneath my palm. Not a kick yet, just a presence, a reminder. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the only one depending on me. The next morning, I woke up early before Ethan, before the city stirred outside our windows. The sky was still gray, the kind of muted morning light that makes everything feel unfinished. I made coffee and opened my laptop at the kitchen table. I wasn't planning anything dramatic. I just wanted clarity. I logged into my bank account and downloaded every statement I could access. Month by month, year by year, the files stacked up on my desktop until the screen felt cluttered and overwhelming. I opened a spreadsheet. I started entering numbers, dates, amounts, notes from memory. The deeper I went, the heavier my chest felt. The pattern was unmistakable. The increases weren't tied to emergencies. They weren't consistent with medical bills. They didn't line up with mortgage adjustments. They lined up with Ashley, a new apartment, a new car, trips, courses, business investments. I stared at the totals until my vision blurred. This wasn't family support. This was financial dependence built on silence. Ethan came into the kitchen while I was still staring at the screen. "You didn't sleep," he said gently. I shook my head. "I needed to see it," I replied. He looked over my shoulder, scanning the spreadsheet. His jaw tightened. "This isn't okay," he said. I nodded. "I know." The thing was, I'd always known something was wrong, but knowing and seeing are different things. I decided not to confront my mother right away. That choice wasn't strategic. It was instinctive. I needed to understand the full picture before stepping into the storm, so I started asking questions, but quietly. I called the mortgage company pretending to be confused about a previous payment I'd made years earlier. They confirmed the balance. It was lower than I expected, much lower. I called the insurance provider, asked general questions about coverage during my father's hospitalization. The bills existed, they just didn't justify years of payments. By the time I hung up, my hands were shaking. I called my grandfather again. This time I didn't hesitate. "I think I've been paying for more than the house," I said. He was quiet for a moment. "Tell me what you found," he said. So I did. When I finished, he sighed. "Your mother has always been resourceful," he said carefully, "especially when it comes to other people's money." The bitterness in his voice startled me. "You knew?" I asked. "I suspected," he replied, "but you never asked, and I couldn't accuse without proof." I swallowed. "I feel stupid," I admitted. "You were loyal," he corrected. "There's a difference." That distinction mattered more than I realized. Word traveled fast in my family. Ashley texted me 2 days later. "Ashley, Mom says you're being distant." Me, "I've been busy." Ashley, "She's worried about Dad." Me, "I am too." Ashley, "Then why are you pulling back?" I stared at the screen. Me, "Why do you need my money, Ashley?" The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Ashley, "What does that mean?" Me, "It means I'm done pretending this is about emergencies." Minutes passed. Ashley, "You've changed." I laughed quietly to myself. She wasn't wrong. My mother didn't call for nearly a week. When she finally did, her voice was sweet. Too sweet. "I made your favorite soup," she said. "I thought I'd bring some by." My stomach clenched. "I don't think that's a good idea," I replied. Another pause. "What's going on, Claire?" she asked. "I'm trying to understand where the money went," I said calmly. The silence this time was sharp. "I don't like your tone," she replied. "I don't like not knowing the truth," I said. She exhaled loudly. "You're pregnant, you're emotional." There it was, the dismissal. "I'm pregnant," I said, "not incompetent." Her voice hardened. "I raised you better than this." Something snapped. "You raised me to fix things," I said. "You didn't raise me to be honest with." She hung up on me. The fallout was immediate. Relatives I barely spoke to started reaching out. Aunts, cousins, people who had never once checked on me before. They all said the same thing. "Your mother is heartbroken. She's under so much stress. You should be more understanding." No one asked for my side. No one ever did. At my next prenatal appointment, the doctor asked how I was feeling. "Overwhelmed," I admitted. "Emotionally or physically?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She smiled kindly. "Stress matters," she said, "for you and the baby." The word baby grounded me. This wasn't just my life anymore. That night, Ethan and I sat at the table and made decisions I'd been avoiding for years. Budgets, boundaries, limits. We decided on a reduced, fixed amount I could send, temporarily, with a clear end date. Not negotiable. I sent my mother a message outlining it. She didn't respond. For 3 days. On the 4th day, she showed up again. This time, she didn't knock. She rang the bell repeatedly until Ethan opened the door. She pushed past him, eyes blazing. "How dare you?" she demanded. I stood up slowly. "How dare I what?" I asked. "Control us," she snapped. "I'm controlling myself," I replied. She laughed bitterly. "You wouldn't have anything without us." The words echoed. That was when I realized something chilling. She believed it. "I won't be sending more than the agreed amount," I said steadily. "And it ends in 6 months." Her face changed. Panic flickered beneath the anger. "You can't do this," she said. "We need you." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't see my mother. I saw a system that had learned to survive by consuming one person quietly. "I can," I said, "and I am." She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. After she left, Ethan held me as I finally cried. Not from guilt, from grief. Because standing up for myself meant accepting something I'd avoided for years. They didn't love me the way I loved them. They loved what I provided. And part 4 would be the moment that truth stopped being private and became impossible to hide. And the week after I told my mother the money would end, I learned just how fragile the truth becomes when it threatens someone's survival. Not survival in the literal sense, not hunger, not homelessness, but survival of control. The silence that followed her last visit was not peaceful. It was strategic. No calls, no texts, no guilt-laced voicemails. At first, part of me hoped that meant she was adjusting, that maybe, just maybe, she was learning how to live without leaning so hard on me. That hope didn't last long, because my mother never retreated. She regrouped. It started with a phone call from my Aunt Linda. She and I had never been close. She lived 2 states away and mostly existed in my life as a voice during holidays and a name on birthday cards. "Claire," she said gently, "your mom is really struggling." I closed my eyes. "What's she saying?" I asked. Linda hesitated. "She says you've cut them off, that you're punishing them because you're pregnant now." I exhaled slowly. "That's not true," I said. "She says your father is terrified," Linda continued, "that he doesn't understand why you're doing this." The familiar pressure crept into my chest. "I didn't cut them off," I replied. "I set a boundary." "Well," Linda said carefully, "not everyone sees it that way." Of course they didn't. Boundaries always look like cruelty to people who benefit from your silence. Within days, more calls followed. Cousins, family friends, people who had never once asked how I was managing suddenly had opinions about how I should behave. "You've always been the mature one. Your mom sacrificed so much. You don't want regrets." Every sentence carried the same underlying message. Go back to your role. Be quiet. Be useful. Be convenient. Ethan watched it all unfold with growing frustration. "They're rewriting reality," he said one night after I hung up another call. "They're scared," I replied. "That doesn't make it okay," he said. I knew he was right, but knowing didn't stop the guilt from creeping in at night when the apartment was quiet and my thoughts got loud. The pregnancy changed everything, not physically at first. That came later, but emotionally, I felt exposed, vulnerable in a way I hadn't before. Every doctor's appointment reminded me that stress wasn't just unpleasant anymore, it was dangerous. For the first time, my body was asking something of me: rest, protection, honesty, things I'd never been good at giving myself. 2 weeks after the boundary conversation, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text, a physical letter from my parents' address. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. "We don't recognize the person you've become. Your actions have devastated this family. Your father's health has worsened under the stress. If something happens to him, you will have to live with that." I read it twice, then a third time. My stomach twisted, not from guilt, but from something colder: manipulation. This wasn't fear speaking, this was leverage. I showed the letter to Ethan. His face darkened. "This is emotional blackmail," he said flatly. I nodded. For the first time, I didn't argue. That night, I called my grandfather. I read the letter to him word for word. He was quiet for a long time afterward. "Claire," he said finally, "your mother learned a long time ago that guilt works better than gratitude." The sentence settled deep. "What do I do?" I asked. "You stop responding privately," he said. "What does that mean?" "It means," he replied, "you stop letting them control the narrative in the shadows." The opportunity came sooner than I expected. My parents hosted a small family gathering the following weekend, a belated birthday dinner for my father. I hadn't been invited, but Ethan had seen the event posted online by one of my cousins. "They're telling their version of the story," he said. I knew he was right, and something in me shifted. "I'm going," I said. Walking into that house felt surreal. The same walls, the same furniture, the same carefully curated sense of normalcy. My mother froze when she saw me. "Claire," she said, forcing a smile, "you should have called." "I wanted to hear what you were saying about me," I replied calmly. The room fell quiet. Every conversation stopped. My father looked confused, tired, smaller than I remembered. "Sweetheart," he said, "what's going on?" I took a breath. "I've been supporting this household financially for nearly a decade," I said clearly, "and I've decided to stop." Gasps rippled through the room. My mother's face flushed. "You don't need to do this," she hissed. Yes, I said. I do. My Aunt Linda stepped forward. Claire, this isn't appropriate. No, I said gently. This is exactly where it belongs. I turned to my father. I love you, I said. But I've been lied to. The money I sent wasn't just for bills. My mother laughed sharply. This is absurd. I pulled out my phone and showed them the spreadsheet. Years of transfers, amounts, dates, silence. My father stared at the screen, then at my mother. Susan? He asked quietly. Her jaw tightened. You went through my finances? She snapped at me. No, I said. I went through mine. The room erupted, excuses, deflections, anger. Ashley arrived late, confusion written across her face. What's happening? She asked. I looked at her. You've been living on my money, I said simply. Her mouth opened, closed. That's not fair, she protested. It's factual, I replied. My mother shouted. My father sat down heavily, and in that moment something irreversible happened. The illusion shattered. I didn't stay long after that. There was nothing left to explain. As I walked out, my mother called after me. You'll regret this. I turned. No, I said. I already regret waiting this long. The fallout was immediate and public. Stories changed, blame shifted, my name circulated with new adjectives: cold, ungrateful, selfish, and for the first time, I let them, because something else was happening too. People were asking questions, and some of the answers didn't match the story my mother had been telling for years. At home that night, I sat quietly, hands resting on my stomach. The baby kicked for the first time, just a flutter, a reminder. I wasn't breaking a family. I was ending a pattern, and part 5 would be the moment when consequences stopped being theoretical and started being unavoidable. And the strangest thing about finally telling the truth was how quiet my life became afterward. No constant phone buzzing, no emergency texts, no late-night calls filled with panic and pressure. For the first time in nearly a decade, my money stayed where it was, and that silence told me more than any argument ever had. The morning after the family gathering, I woke up with a knot in my chest and a strange sense of calm beneath it. The apartment felt different, lighter, like the air itself wasn't holding its breath anymore. Ethan was already awake, sitting at the table with his laptop open. You okay? He asked gently. I nodded. I think so, I said, and for once, I meant it. I checked my phone. No messages from my mother, no missed calls, no guilt-laced reminders. That absence should have hurt. Instead, it felt like proof. The fallout didn't come from my parents directly. It came sideways. Extended family chats went quiet. Then new ones appeared, without me. Friends of my parents stopped liking my posts. A cousin unfollowed me. I noticed. I just didn't chase, because something else was happening too. People were asking questions. 3 days after the confrontation, my father called me. Not my mother, my father. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Claire, he said quietly. His voice sounded older, smaller. Hi, Dad. There was a long pause. I didn't know, he said. The words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't know how much you were sending, he continued. Your mother handled everything. I trusted her. I swallowed. I know, I said. She says you're exaggerating, he added. I closed my eyes. I showed you the records, I replied. Another pause. Yes, he admitted. You did. His voice cracked. I'm sorry, he said. That was the first apology I'd received in 9 years. It didn't fix everything, but it mattered. After that call, the pressure escalated. Not from him, from my mother. She didn't beg, she threatened. The first email arrived late at night. It was long, rambling, emotional. She accused me of humiliating her, of turning the family against her, of exaggerating numbers to make her look bad. She claimed the money was owed to her. For everything I gave up to raise you, she wrote. I read it once, then I archived it. The second email was colder. She warned me that stopping the payments could have legal consequences, that I'd made verbal commitments, that families don't operate on contracts, but courts do. That one made my hands shake. Ethan read it and frowned. "She's bluffing," he said, "but we should be careful." So I was. I contacted a lawyer, not dramatically, not angrily, practically. I brought bank records, transfer histories, messages. The lawyer flipped through them slowly. "This isn't support," she said finally. "This is voluntary assistance with no legal obligation." Relief washed over me. "She's trying to scare you," the lawyer added. "And based on these records, she's the one who would have questions to answer if this went further." I nodded. For the first time, fear loosened its grip. The next move came from Ashley. She showed up at my apartment unannounced. She looked different, tired, defensive, stripped of confidence. "You really messed things up," she said as soon as I opened the door. I didn't invite her in. "What do you want, Ashley?" I asked. She crossed her arms. "Mom says you're trying to ruin us." I laughed softly. "I stopped paying," I replied. "That's not ruin, that's reality." "You always think you're better than us," she snapped. "No," I said calmly. "I think I was used." Her face twisted. "I didn't ask you to pay for my life," she said. "You accepted it," I replied. Silence. Then quieter. "I didn't know it was that much." I believed her, and that hurt too. She left without apologizing, but she didn't ask for money again. That mattered. The real collapse came 2 weeks later. My father called again. This time his voice was shaken. "Your mother can't account for some of the money?" he said. I closed my eyes. "How much?" I asked. "I don't know," he admitted, "but things don't add up." He told me about credit cards he didn't know existed, about withdrawals he never approved, about expenses that didn't make sense. "She says it's none of my business," he said quietly. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. "It is your business," I said. "It always was." That night, my mother finally called, not screaming, not crying, cold. "You've turned everyone against me," she said. "No," I replied. "Your choices did that." "You think you're so righteous now," she sneered. "Pregnant, moral." I inhaled slowly. "I think I'm done," I said. She laughed bitterly. "You wouldn't survive without us." The words didn't sting anymore. "I already am," I replied. After that call, something shifted publicly. My father stopped defending her. Extended family stopped calling me. And quietly. The story changed. People noticed my parents downsizing, selling things, canceling plans. The money wasn't there anymore. And without it, the truth became harder to hide. One afternoon, my grandfather came to visit. He hadn't seen me since before the pregnancy. He placed a hand on my stomach and smiled softly. "You did the hardest thing," he said. "You broke the cycle." I swallowed. "It doesn't feel brave," I admitted. "It feels lonely." He nodded. "It always does at first." The baby kicked more often now. Each movement felt like punctuation, a reminder that something new was coming, something honest. The final blow came unexpectedly. A letter arrived, not from my mother, from an accountant. It explained in formal language that my parents were restructuring finances due to previous mismanagement. Mismanagement. The word sat heavy on the page. That was it. The official acknowledgement. The quiet admission. That night, Ethan and I sat together on the couch. "We're okay," he said. I nodded. For the first time, I believed it. Because when the money stopped, the truth didn't disappear. It surfaced. And part 6 would be the moment I stopped reacting and finally started living. And the day my daughter was born was the day I finally understood something I should have learned years earlier. Love is not proven by sacrifice, it's proven by presence. The delivery room was quiet in a way I didn't expect. Not silent, just focused. Monitors hummed softly. Nurses moved with calm efficiency. Ethan stood beside me, his hand wrapped around mine, grounding me when the contractions blurred time into something shapeless and raw. I wasn't thinking about my mother. That alone felt like a victory. When our daughter finally arrived, crying and pink and impossibly small, the world narrowed to one moment. One breath, one life, one truth. I looked at her, tears sliding sideways into my hair, and something ancient and fierce woke up inside me. I will never make you earn love. I whispered it to her without realizing I'd spoken aloud. Ethan smiled, his own eyes wet. "She's perfect," he said. And for the first time in my life, I believed perfection didn't require performance. The days after her birth were slow and soft. Pain, yes. Exhaustion, definitely. But also peace. No frantic calls, no guilt-tripping texts, no emotional invoices disguised as concern. My phone stayed quiet, and the silence felt earned. My father came to visit first. Alone. He stood awkwardly in the doorway of the hospital room, hands clasped, eyes unsure. "May I?" he asked, nodding toward the baby. I hesitated only a second. Then I nodded. He held her like she was made of glass, his shoulders stiff, his breath shallow. "She looks like you did," he said quietly. I watched his face as something softened there. "I should have protected you," he said. I didn't rush to comfort him. "I needed you to," I replied. He nodded slowly. "I know." That was it. No excuses, no deflection, just truth. And that mattered more than apology. My mother didn't come. She sent a message instead. A long one, emotional, circular, defensive. She congratulated me, then reminded me how difficult childbirth had been for her decades ago. She mentioned stress, betrayal, how boundaries were tearing families apart. I read it once, then I deleted it. Not dramatically, just decisively. The first real test came 6 weeks later, a family event, my cousin's engagement party. I almost didn't go, but Ethan squeezed my hand. "You don't have to hide anymore," he said. So we went. The room buzzed with conversation when we arrived. People noticed us immediately. The baby, the absence of my mother. The tension was subtle, but it was there. Whispers followed us like shadows. "She looks good," someone murmured. "I heard she cut them off," another said. I smiled politely, held my daughter closer. Didn't explain, didn't defend. Eventually, my aunt cornered me near the drink table. "I hope you know what you're doing," she said quietly. "I do," I replied. She frowned. "Your mother's struggling." I met her eyes. "She struggled while taking my money too," I said calmly. Her mouth opened, then closed. She nodded once and walked away. That moment told me everything. Over the next few months, the truth settled in. Without my financial support, my parents' lifestyle changed drastically. The house was sold, credit cards closed. My mother started working part-time for the first time in years. She hated it. I heard that through the grapevine. I didn't celebrate, I didn't gloat, but I didn't rescue her either. Ashley reached out again. This time, it wasn't about money. "I didn't realize how messed up things were," she admitted over coffee. She looked different now, quieter, less entitled. "I thought Mom just handled things," she said. "I didn't know she was taking everything from you." I studied her face. "I know," I said. She swallowed. "I'm sorry." That was new. I didn't hug her, but I accepted it. That was enough. The biggest surprise came from my grandfather. He asked me to dinner one evening. Just the two of us. Over pasta and wine, he cleared his throat. "I changed my will," he said. I stiffened. "I didn't ask for—" "I know," he interrupted gently. "That's why I did it." He explained that he'd placed a trust in my daughter's name. Education, security, freedom. "I won't enable manipulation," he said, "but I will reward integrity." I cried, not because of the money, but because someone finally saw the difference. Months passed. Our daughter grew stronger, louder, more opinionated. Every smile felt like confirmation. Every laugh felt like proof that I'd done the right thing. Then one afternoon, my mother showed up, unannounced, at my door. I froze when I saw her through the peephole. Older, thinner, less polished. I didn't open the door right away. I took a breath, then another, and then I did. "Claire," she said, voice trembling. "Please." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "This is not a visit," I said calmly. "It's a conversation." She nodded quickly. "I lost everything," she whispered. I waited. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said. I thought you'd always be there." I looked at her, really looked. "I was," I said. "You just never noticed." Tears streamed down her face. "I don't know how to fix this," she sobbed. I believed her, but belief didn't equal responsibility anymore. "You don't fix it with me," I said gently. "You fix it with yourself." She looked up, desperate. "Can I see her?" she asked. My chest tightened. "No," I said softly. She flinched. "Not yet." That night I cried, not from guilt, from grief, because accepting reality meant letting go of the mother I wished I had, and that hurt. A year later, life looked different, stable, honest, quiet in all the best ways. My father came to birthdays. Ashley sent cards. My mother stayed distant. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. One evening, as I rocked my daughter to sleep, she grabbed my finger and looked up at me with total trust. No fear, no calculation, just love. And I made her a promise out loud. "I will never make you feel small," I whispered. "You don't owe me anything, not love, not loyalty, not sacrifice." She yawned, curled closer, and slept. That was the moment I knew. The cycle was broken. If you're listening to this and wondering if it's okay to stop giving, if you're scared that choosing yourself means you're selfish, let me tell you something I learned too late. People who love you won't punish you for having limits. People who only love what you provide will. And that's not your burden to carry. Family is not who drains you. Family is who shows up, who stays, who chooses you, even when there's nothing to take. I finally found mine. And it started the moment I stopped apologizing for existing. If this story moved you, if even one moment felt familiar, then you're not alone. This wasn't just a story about money, betrayal, or family conflict. It was about boundaries, self-respect, and the quiet courage it takes to finally say enough. Some families don't break because you leave. They break because they were already broken, and you stop pretending. Love doesn't demand sacrifice until you're empty. Real love doesn't punish you for choosing peace, and walking away doesn't make you cruel. Sometimes it makes you free. If you've ever been guilt-tripped for saying no, felt invisible while giving everything, or stayed silent just to keep the peace, this story was for you. Have you ever had to choose yourself over family? Yes, and it was painful. I'm thinking about it right now. No, but this story opened my eyes. Tell me which one in the comments, and if you're comfortable, share where you're watching from. I read every comment. If this story resonated with you, like this video, it tells the algorithm this story matters. Subscribe, new emotional stories every week. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. You never know who's silently fighting the same battle. If you want more stories like this, check out She Cut Off Her Family and Everything Changed. They took everything from her until she walked away. The Day I Stopped Begging for Love. Those stories are waiting for you on this channel. You don't owe anyone your suffering. You don't owe anyone silence. And you don't owe anyone access to your life just because they share your blood. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying until the end. And remember, choosing yourself is not betrayal.